Welcome to Business Talk, presented in collaboration with the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers from the heart of southeastern Ohio at the University of Rio Grande TV studio. Our goals are simple: promote the University of Rio Grande and the Ohio State University South Centers, as well as advocate local small businesses and support their organizations. More importantly, promote Southeastern Ohio as a wonderful place to live, explore, and learn. There are many different ways you can find us. The University of Rio Grande Cable Access Channel 17, live online at blogtalkradio.com, and on YouTube if you are unable to catch our show live. Introducing our co-hosts from the University of Rio Grande, Jason Winters, Director of the Center for Small Business Entrepreneurship; Mike Thompson, Director of the Instructional Design and Media Services; and Patrick Dengel, Business Development Specialist from the Ohio State University South Centers. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Well, thank you, Amanda. You know, Mike, it's rather interesting. Last week we had Peter Masters, who is a MBA student here at the University of Rio Grande, and behind us we have Jason, who's manning the cameras, etc. And this week we are fortunate to have Amanda, who is also an MBA student and also is the training coordinator. Or let's see, what is your title?
Well, I'm the coordinator of adult recruitment for Rio Grande Community College, and I'm also responsible for community outreach here.
Well, I think that's fantastic that you were able to join us. And today we're featuring a special guest from Ohio State, as you said, the Ohio State University up in Columbus, the Leadership Center, Beth Flynn. Beth, welcome to our program. It's good having you here on our podcast show.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here.
I know that you're going to be talking a lot about different personality traits and the effectiveness of being good people, working good co-workers and things of that nature. But before you do that, tell us about yourself. Okay,
I'd like to open with a story. I think that we are much more than just who we are and our job title or what we do at work. And so I like to give a little history lesson about where I grew up. I grew up in a small town in southern Ohio, and it's called Greenfield. A lot of people have never heard of the town because it's so small and there's no direct highway to it. You have to be searching for it to get to there. But Greenfield is famous because it is the hometown of Johnny Paycheck. And for those of you who have never met Johnny Paycheck, he's famous. Was a country singer, and he was famous for the song "Take This Job and Shove It." You may have hummed that sometime in your life, but I'm sure it's not in your current jobs. But I never got to meet Johnny Paycheck, and for those of you who do not know him, he prided himself on being a rebel, and so he lived up to that moniker when he was in a bar fight in the late 70s, early 80s, and he shot a man and went to prison. What does this have to do with anything about leadership?
So you've been in prison?
No, I haven't been in prison. I drive by a prison, but I've never been to prison.
But you got into a bar fight.
No.
No.
Oh. Not a bar fight either.
Oh, okay.
What happened is that I was having car trouble once and was being transported back to Greenfield in a tow truck. And the tow truck driver and I got to a detour because there's no one easy way to get to Greenfield, and I felt comfortable with him. So I said to the tow truck driver, I will take you on all the back roads. So we get to Greenfield, and I asked him if he'd ever been to Greenfield before, and he said no, he'd never heard of it before. And I said, do you like country music? And he said, I love country music. And I said, oh, this is the hometown of Johnny Paycheck. And he slammed his hand on the dashboard and he said, I know Johnny Paycheck. I was in prison with him.
Wow.
Oh. Wow.
So luckily, I am still here today.
And you felt comfortable with this guy too.
I obviously felt comfortable with him. I built a relationship because that's part of being a good leader is building relationships with others. And so what happened is I started telling the story wherever I went, and I had car trouble another time many years later, and I live in Chillicothe now, and the tow truck driver said, I love Chillicothe, did you grow up there? So I tell him the Greenfield, all the Greenfield stuff, and when I get to the, hometown of Johnny Paycheck, being in Greenfield, he said, I was in the bar that night, that Johnny Paycheck shot that man before he went to prison. So I started using this as an introduction when I go out and do leadership programs, because there's so many leadership lessons that can be applied: building relationships, communicating, being able to act on a moment's notice, all those kinds of things that are really important as a leader. And so since then, I met the bailiff's niece from the court case, somebody who worked at the prison when Johnny was in prison, the guy who was shot in the bar, his son's best friend, and then somebody.
I listened to the song at least once.
Yes.
So.
Well, yeah. Now I've got a connection. Thank you. And then finally, somebody who lived down the street from him just before he died.
Wow.
So it just shows that it's a small world, and it's about making connections and building those relationships with other people is really the best way to lead.
And I think it's not only leading, it's sales, it's building businesses, and a lot of different things is really, most things are about building relationships.
Yes, we always say that there's two parts to leadership, and that is building relationships and communicating, and that can apply to every bit of our lives, because if you can't build relationships with other people, no one's going to follow you, and if you can't communicate your message to them, people aren't going to listen. And communication is something that we need to do more and more of, because it gets lost in all the chaos of all the communication that comes towards us.
I would imagine in your line, working here at the University of Rio Grande, Amanda, that communications is one of those specific areas where you are constantly on the line.
I am out and about in the community, and I'm at a lot of the fairs and festivals. So I call myself the fair queen. I know everybody else does too here at Rio, but I'm usually there, and you have to be able, if somebody comes up to you and wants to know about your college, and you really have to be a good communicator and find something that connects you with that person. And I think that was a good story that Beth told, just as communicators that we need to do.
Oh, very good, very good. We had a chance to talk a little bit earlier in regards to what you had mentioned something, and I want to bring this up. We oftentimes are very critical of ourselves. We are very critical of other individuals, of situations, and you brought up the point that we're really not doing ourselves a good favor.
No, you're not. When you focus on what's wrong, all you do is prevent failure. But we live in a negative society where people want, or not that we want to, but we focus on what's wrong instead of what's right. And when you focus on what's right and what you do well, you get more of that. Because what research shows is you get what you focus on. So if you focus on, if you're going up and you're going to have to go give a speech, and you all you're thinking is don't trip, don't trip, don't trip, you're going to trip. Because you're so worried, you're focusing on tripping rather than I'm going to walk up to the podium and give this wonderful speech. And it's all about positive psychology and focusing on what you do well and bringing more of that into your life.
Sometimes, can that be a danger? If we're constantly thinking positive,
You don't want to come off as arrogant. You have to be careful.
Yes, but we've spent so much of our time being almost apologizing for what we do well, when we each have unique gifts and talents that we've been given to share with this world. And when we focus on that, you're living authentically. And, for example, if Mike wasn't here today, this would be a totally different conversation, because Mike isn't here sharing his gifts and talents with us. And we all have these unique gifts and talents that we need to share, because that's what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you are one of the principal individuals that go around with the Strength Finder, the Gallup Strength Finder, and there are 34, is it my understanding, 34 different unique strengths that
Yes.
an individual has?
Yes, the Gallup Association has identified 34 strengths which people tend to possess, and the best thing about what I have found with the Strengths Finder is when you take the assessment, you are told your top 5 strengths, and that's it. Because the belief of Strengths Finder and what they're finding in their research is, and they researched the best of the best with focus groups and came up with themes and everything, is that when you focus on what people do well, we all get to the same result. We just get to go there differently. So what strengths I have may be different than yours, Patrick, but but we can get to the same result. We just get there differently by focusing on what we do well.
What are some of the categories?
Okay, I'll share my top 5
Okay.
strengths.
All right.
I'm woo, which is winning others over.
Woo.
Woo.
W-O-O.
WOO. It's the only acronym of the 34
okay.
strengths. And probably best way to think about it is the Walmart greeter on in the commercials.
Oh, that's my retirement job.
I know, mine too. Making people feel comfortable and then moving on. It's about winning that person over. My positivity, and I always can find something good in anything that happens, or do the twist and turn things around. And it's not about being Pollyanna and being oblivious to what's going on, but it's choosing to focus on the good. Another one of my strengths is communication. I love to present. I really like to tell stories and engage people through communication, so that fits very well with my job. Another one of my strengths is strategic, and being strategic is when you can take chaos and find order within that chaos.
Finding order or making order?
Making order.
Okay.
And you kind of always have to have a plan B or C or D. And that's kind of what the strategic is. And then my other strength is includer. And think about somebody on the playground who didn't have anybody to play with.
Is backward, standing off to the side or whatever.
As an includer, other people can let it go. As an includer, I couldn't let it go. I'd have to bring that person into the group. And they may choose and want to be alone, but includers tend to want everybody to feel part of the group, and so very against cliques, and so that everybody feels a part of the group. And so my strengths just happen to fit my job. And when you work in your strengths and live your strengths, time goes faster, you're more productive, and people want to be around you because you're being who you are and you're happy.
Do you think we naturally find the right job by our strengths, or do they form us possibly? Because I know working in broadcasting, there's, in a radio station, it's a very small group, and there are definitely different personalities, and salespeople, and engineers, and program directors, and general managers, and the financial guys. So it's just a group of many different personalities in the same place, and you can pick them out. You know who the personalities are and where they fit.
I would need to do a little bit more research on that, but I feel that we naturally tend to be drawn to what we're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to college to be an accountant because that's all I knew, and I don't do math. So, it wasn't like the smartest move I've ever made, but that's what I knew. And so once I started taking marketing and management classes, it was like I didn't even have to study because it came so naturally to me. It came naturally to me because I liked it. And so I was just naturally studying more. And that's living in your strengths versus living outside of your strengths. When I was doing accounting, I was not living in my strengths. When I started the marketing and management, which was more my strengths, which is different than personality, is when I really, really blossomed and really, came to know myself even better.
Do you find having a sense of humor, or a perceived sense of humor, etc., is important in today's society, today's personality?
Yes, so much is happening, and if you can't laugh at yourself and some of the absurd things that go on, I just don't know how people survive that. I don't know if that's coming from my positive personality or just my view on attitude, because I do my best to choose to always have a good attitude about things and to laugh about what's going on. I'm just a natural laugher, so I always like to find the humor.
My wife thinks I'm rude like that because I'll make jokes at a funeral.
It's what gets you through.
Yes. You need to look up there's a Mary Tyler Moore episode when Chuckles the Clown dies. And look that up on YouTube.
Yeah,
Okay.
and she starts laughing during the funeral.
She's chastising everybody before when they're making jokes, and then when it comes to the serious part, Mary cracks up laughing.
Well, I myself do feel that you should have a good sense of humor, but sometimes it's really tough when you have 3 or 4 things that you have to get done, and
it kind of consumes you, and you forget that.
Yes, and
so you need positive people in your life, or people with good senses of humor, to keep you laughing. And we all have been around people who I would consider an energy vampire. They just suck the living daylights out of you because they are so negative, and they could win the lottery and could tell you everything wrong with winning the lottery rather than reveling in what's good. And I try to avoid as much as possible being around those people, or if I have to be around those people, know I have to be talking to somebody positive after that, because it can literally suck the life out of you and take away, your happy thoughts. I
would just like to know why people don't laugh at my jokes.
Maybe they're not funny.
Don't have to be realistic.
No, you have a very good sense of humor.
Communications. Someone once said, and I'm not sure who said this, but we can only communicate about 20%. If we were able to see the pictures in our mind and be able to throw those pictures to the other individual, we wouldn't have the miscommunications. And oftentimes, especially in the English language, we could say the moon looks green, and you could have 3 or 4 different interpretations.
I see that with male and female, because guys are more just basic. You could say
we're simple,
right?
Yeah.
Say there's something on the carpet, and then the wife or whoever is like, why do you say that? Or reading things into it, where it's like, we just made an observation, I wasn't hinting at anything. And it hits people, maybe even with inflection, and the tones and different things.
The words we use are only a small percentage of how we communicate. It's also communicated in our tone of voice and our body language. And that's where a lot of trouble is coming in now. I've been there and done this in texting and email, because people can misread.
You text in all caps?
No, that's shouting.
That's shouting.
But what happens is that you can read it and I can read it, and we can read 2 different things.
Yes.
Because
true.
we don't have the tone, and you don't have the body language to read what that person is trying to say. And so a lot of communication gets lost, and that's why we do need to make time for the face-to-face communication, because once you have that relationship built, it's not so hard to have the text or the email conversations. But Paul Axtell, who used to be he did a lot of work with Kellogg, and he used to be an executive at AT&T. His belief is that your relationship with somebody is your last 3 conversations with them. And so sometimes when it's been just texting, you can lose a lot. Or I think about the times when we take people for granted, and it's like, take the trash out. That was one conversation, and then the next time I see you, it's, did you do this? And so it really makes you focus on, who do I need to have a positive conversation with? Who do I need to spend some time with and put some relationship into our emotional bank accounts with each other?
I can very much agree with what you're saying, especially if you're trying to be a little bit funny or sarcastic in an email or a text form, boy, you have to be really careful, because if somebody has had a bad day, they can reinterpret
Yes.
what you are saying many different ways, and you have no idea that you really have offended someone when you were thinking that you were having.
Initially, when the internet started, I would become part of a forum and stuff, and I would ask questions or make a comment on something. People would always blow up about it, and it's like, what did I say? But it doesn't happen as much now, so I don't know if I've learned how to communicate through just writing better or something, but I used to irritate the crap out of people.
Well,
Used to?
that's true.
Oh, sorry.
She said it, not me.
And nice thing is, she's going to be on the
Oh,
air
yes.
next week.
You'll be the victim next
Yes,
time.
that's right.
Knew what paybacks are.
But you know, our sense of communication, we think so quickly, and pictures are 1,000 words.
Yes.
And it's too bad that we cannot communicate with pictures. Like, for instance, picture 72, 1925, and everyone's going, oh, I understand. That's a little abstract, but in essence, our words really limit what we're trying to converse, what we're trying to say.
Have you seen, with your working with people at OSU, have you seen any results and feedback from what you've done?
For my work with
improvements and things?
yes and no. There's a whole community of people at OSU who are doing StrengthsFinder. It's Strengths Quest for college students, and so there's probably 200 to 300 people at OSU who are trained to do StrengthsFinder or Strengths Quest, and so we're seeing small changes. It's not maybe so much statistical data, but anecdotal data.
You wouldn't go into an office and say, what's going on here, and I'll counsel you guys on how to get along better or whatever.
This is a personal belief. I believe when you're doing strengths, and something that my department is currently doing is when you do StrengthsFinder, you get as a group you get what they call a talent map, and it shows everybody's top 5 strengths on a spreadsheet. They're divided into categories based on if they're executing strengths, with the strengths that we use to get things done, the influencing strengths, which are about persuading people, the relationship building or team building, which holds the team together, and then finally the visioning and strategic strengths, which are all about the planning and the visioning before you start a project or a new idea. And so what I like to do, and what we're aiming to do in our department, is to take our strengths of the department and start assigning tasks and committees based on where your strengths lie. My strengths tend to lie in the influencing, so you want me out doing some of the sales or communicating some of the ideas rather than maybe in the executing, which I don't have any strengths in my top 5 that fit that, and that's okay. I can still get things done, but I can get it done in a different way than somebody whose strengths are executing.
Do you look at other things as examples, sort of like the Trump, the Celebrity Apprentice? Do you tear that one apart?
I've never seen it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I'm more of a sports fan than
Okay.
What workshops are you? Do you do different workshops for groups?
Yes, I do. I have been focusing on the strengths finder, and then I do strengths with teams and employee engagement using your strengths. And in March, I'm really excited to be offering, it's called the Full Monty, and that is you get all 34 of your strengths, but you have had to participate in an introductory strengths workshop first, because we want you to focus on your top 5 strengths. We would automatically go and look at what we don't do well rather than what we do well. In addition to that, I really focus a lot on personality styles, because I think we all have our own unique personality styles that we use to get things done. And what causes stress to you may be different than me or than to Mike or Patrick because of our personalities. And so what I've also started doing is having participants take the Strengths Finder and participate in a personality assessment workshop, and then combine the two, and how can we work with, within our personality styles and our strengths to make our office stronger.
Do you do the Myers-Briggs to do that?
I personally use, it's called Spectrum Development, and it's based on Myers-Briggs research and Please Understand Me, or Kiersey research.
Because it's somewhat helpful to know that maybe this person's a feeling type or whatever, and this person is not so much, and they're more logical, and just to understand where they're coming from so you don't get offended or hurt.
And that's correct. And what the program that I use is colors. And so we can do it as a color. And so I can say, I'm an orange and I need lots of freedom. And so in saying that, you understand that I need lots of space, and maybe you need a lot of details. And so you can say, I need a lot of details, so I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And so it can really change the office, because it's like, oh, they're not doing that because they don't trust me. They're asking all those questions because they need the information.
Right.
And that's where it really is important that we understand that we're acting out of our own personal needs and not to drive other people crazy.
Mm-hmm. Beth, having had a little bit longer life than all of us in here, and having been involved in social services, etc., I had the opportunity to do many different, I don't think you remember transactional analysis, or some of the others. There was one specifically where everyone attacked everyone, and what they would do is they would pick on someone and get at the root, help that individual to understand what his weaknesses were.
By picking on him and beating him up?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
One time they had him on the ground. He was in a fetal position, and they were all saying, "Why do you hate your mother?" And that was in the 70s.
I went through basic training, so maybe I can relate.
But that has since turned me off against many of the self-assessments, because there is always a fear that you will be misinterpreted.
Yes.
Someone will give you a cold prickly and not a warm fuzzy.
Well, or a lot of people fear being pigeonholed. Like,
yes,
I'm only this. And my personal belief is that we need to know as much as we can about ourselves, because when we understand where we're coming from, we can understand where other people are coming from. And so when you understand that, I'm sorry, I'm still shocked about the laying on the ground.
No, it happened. Happened.
And I think we've come
Kick him again.
We've come a long way, and that's why I am so sold on the Gallup Strengths Finder, because it's about positive, and it's based on positive psychology. It's all about what people do well, rather than picking on somebody for what they can't do.
Right.
And we are, I believe that my personal mission on earth is to help, mainly as a leader, and in my role is to help people become who they are, recognizing what their gifts and their talents are, so they are sharing what they do well with the world, rather than comparing themselves, like comparing myself to you, Patrick, or Mike, or Amanda, and trying to be somebody I'm not. I want people to be who they are, because that's what they're here for. The
best them they can be.
The best them they can be. I can never be just like my sister or a coworker, but I can be the best me. And I know that in the intro, or the advertisement for the show, I used a quote from St. Francis of Assisi, and it's kind of become my mantra rallying theme, and it's be only who you are and do that perfectly. And I have to remind myself sometimes, I was really nervous about coming here today, and I'm like, I can only be who I am.
That's right.
And if I came in here trying to be somebody who I'm not, then it's very obvious I'm not comfortable. I'm still nervous, but I wouldn't be able to share the message that I need to share, that I feel I need to share.
Right.
As a leader. I would be trying to be somebody else, and it would come through very clearly.
Okay, this test you're talking about, can you do that for free if people are interested?
No.
Okay.
There's a cost to it. You can get it's called StrengthsFinder 2.0, and it's a book, and you can pick that up in a local bookstore or order it online. You have to get a new book because there's one code per book. And in that code, then you have a code and you log on into the Gallup website, StrengthsFinder website, and you take the assessment. It's 180 questions, and you have 20 seconds to answer each question because they don't want you to think about it and analyze. They want you to go on instinct.
That?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Why are they asking me that, and what's the right answer?
Yes,
Right.
yes. They want you to answer rather than think about it. And so it's been highly, highly tested. I can't tell you how many people have taken it, but it's in the millions. And it's been around for a good 7-8 years or so. So it's highly tested, highly researched, and always coming up with new things around that and helping people. They've done it with sales, and they've, with teams, and so it's just a very well researched program.
Okay.
And it's all about the good rather than what we're not good at.
I understand. Beth, I want to thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy schedule, coming down to the University of Rio Grande and joining us and sharing some insights. Boy, I hope you can return. I was hoping to hear some of the amusing stories that you had planned on giving us, so you have to come back.
Okay, I'll be glad to come back.
Good. And next week, we feature Amanda Amon. Amanda's going to tell us a lot about the University of Rio Grande and some of the adult programs and the recruitment and things of that nature. Thank you for listening. I'm Patrick.
I'm Mike.
I'm Beth.
And I'm Amanda.
Thanks for watching.
Have a great evening.